141. I want it back. With a clever burst of the water stream, Ugly President's fist was deflected again. His face flushed red with rage, his features contorted. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Why is everyone picking on me like this? Is it just because I'm ugly? You bunch of better-looking bastards all deserve to die. Ugly President's manic shriek made the air itself ripple. The sound stabbed at Bang and the others, making their eardrums throb. Shut up with that screaming, an annoyed voice cut in beside him. Taking advantage of the monster's fury, Metal Bat had somehow closed the distance and raised his bat. From an angle the others couldn't see, a hidden aura swelled around Metal Bat and surged into the bat like a tide. Metal Pummel! Metal Bat slammed the bat into Ugly President's leg. The sickening crack of tearing flesh and bone rang out as the left leg shattered. Ugly President howled, lost his balance, and tumbled to the ground, his massive body kicking up clouds of dust. He struggled to lift his head. Dust smeared his face, making him look even fouler. His sanity snapped. His eyes went blood red as he wildly smashed his fist at the spot Metal Bat had just been. Despite his injuries, Metal Bat's attributes were greatly enhanced. He leaped aside, dodging the blow, and landed on Ugly President's back. He brushed his hair back, blood coated his face, and held his hair up into a perfect pompadour. You're ugly and you scream like an idiot. I've had enough of looking at you. He leaned back, muscles flexing, and drove his bat down into Ugly President's spine. The 100-meter-tall body folded into a V. The ground cracked, debris flew. With his spine shattered, Ugly President could move only by writhing helplessly. Between clenched teeth, he spat venomous, weak words. Die! I'll kill you all. I'll destroy your faces. A thunderous roar exploded in Ugly President's ears. In his blood-clouded vision, a twisted humanoid form materialized. It had no real face. Its voice was vast and thunderous, saturated with the scorn of one disappointed in incompetence. What a pile of trash! You are unworthy of my power. I am taking it back. The moment Ugly President heard that, he felt the divine power within him being siphoned away, drawn into the void realm. His massive body began to shrink. His life force flowed out with the divine power. His once potent physicality withered. Terrified at the coming end, Ugly President shook his head frantically. No, Lord God, you can't do this. Please no, I can still fight. I can still kill them. Shut up, you useless things. I will take it back from all of you. You have no right to keep existing. No, please. Ugly President's cries faded as his form dried into a shriveled corpse, skin slack and lifeless. The S-Class trio who had watched the whole scene were stunned. Metal Bat, still crouched on the corpse's back, stared at the baked, shriveled remains. What happened? How did he just dry up after being beaten to death? Atomic Samurai's nose twitched. He tightened his grip on his longsword and scanned the area with a grave look. Something's wrong. There's a dangerous presence nearby. This place isn't safe. Bang frowned. He could feel Ugly President's energy and life force being drained by something unknown. Seeing the terror on Ugly President's face before death, he put the pieces together. Looks like the mastermind, this so-called god, has acted. He's very unhappy with how these dragon-level monsters performed. Atomic Samurai raised an eyebrow, his gaze as sharp as his blade, his body radiating a cold, precise aura. You mean the one calling himself God is stepping in personally? Metal Bat sneered, hands tight around his bat, the blood on his face making him look even more fierce. I don't care if he's a god or not. Let him take a swing from my bat first. On the other side of the battlefield, Pig God and Watchdog Man, who had been fighting Gums, sensed the same wrongness. They instinctively backed away dozens of meters. Gums let out a terror-filled shriek, as if confronted with something it could not bear. Its bloody maw split in its scream while it retreated, but then its swollen, white, glutinous body began to shrink rapidly, shriveling before their eyes. Within seconds, Gums' mummified form crashed to the ground, motionless. At the same time, Tatsumaki felt Homeless Emperor flailing behind her and turned in irritation. You filthy, stinking, middle-aged bum, stay still, or I'll snap off your... She stopped as soon as she saw his face. Homeless Emperor's eyes were full of abject terror and pleading. His skin was deathly pale. Lord God, please don't take my power away. I still want revenge. I still want to fight for you. Don't take it. God did not answer. Homeless Emperor was precisely the kind of subject God wanted to strip. He held 2 portions of power, yet had an abysmal combat record. It was better, from God's view, to reclaim it. P.S. There was no update yesterday. My sincere apologies. I live in Guangdong, and the flu has been going around. I caught it and had a 39 degrees Celsius fever. It's barely coming down now, but I still feel miserable. I'm sorry to everyone, but don't worry. Since I'm feeling a bit better today, I will resume updates. Another chapter will be coming soon. I finally get to hang up. Homeless Emperor's fanatical faith in God collapsed in an instant. No, Lord, you can't do this to me, he croaked. He had always believed God to be the savior who granted him power and pulled him out of hopeless situations, his rightful benefactor. Now God was taking that power back and calling him trash. The realization hit Homeless Emperor like a hammer. God had never truly seen him. He had only been a vessel. His chest tore with the revelation, his features twisting into something ugly and desperate. No, you can't do this to me. I was your messenger in the human world. I solved your problems. I fought for you. You can't just... Bullshit, the word detonated like thunder. Homeless Emperor froze, the frantic words dying on his lips as a paralyzing force seized him. From the alternate dimension, God's rage rang out like a storm. A contorted, laughing face opened in that alien void. You dare say that? You call yourself my messenger? Then tell me, what have you actually done? What have you accomplished? You carried 2 portions of my power. You had immeasurable firepower. Your divine power exceeded your companions. And what did you achieve? You achieved nothing. Now you lie imprisoned, whining and blaming me. You're trash. Homeless Emperor's mouth twitched. He tried to speak, but then something like a maw dragged at him from within. Ah! God punished the disrespect by draining him. Where he might have taken life and power quickly, this time he drew them out slowly, deliberately. So Homeless Emperor felt both his life force and his divine power being wrenched away together, a ripping, tendon-tearing agony. High, keening screams shredded the air. His body convulsed and visibly withered under the effect. Skin tightened, muscles collapsed, all color leached out. When his divine power and life force were finally gone, his screams stopped. Homeless Emperor lay there, a mummified husk, utterly motionless. Nian Nian, already dying some distance away, received the same fate. One last scream, then its remaining life and power were drained clean. It too crumpled into a desiccated corpse. Zombie Man, who had already regenerated once, wiped blood from his mouth and stared at the dead Homeless Emperor with stunned bewilderment. He's dead? And he looked like he saw something terrifying before he went. Was it God? Tatsumaki's face was stone. She'd held back, afraid that if she lost control, she would tear Homeless Emperor apart to extract information. Now he was dead, and the chance to learn anything from him was gone. Fury and frustration warred on her features. I held back for nothing, she thought. Bang looked up, solemn. He had been scanning the field. The once bustling City Z now lay in ruins, ash and wreckage after the clash between the S-class heroes and the 5 dragon-level executives. 4 of those executives lay fallen. Still, every powerful being there felt a prickling unease. At their level, intuition rarely lied. Bang noticed that all the special life signatures on the field had vanished. These are all dead, he said. The power that this so-called God bestowed on them has been taken back. Metal bats slumped to the scorched earth, dizzy from blood loss. So what now, Old Man Bang? What do you think the situation is? Bang's eyes tracked the ruined skyline and the lingering distortions in the air. A single image flashed in his mind, a tremendous, muscular figure blazing with light, and his pupils narrowed. If God focuses all his power onto the strongest of the dragon-level executives, how do we respond? Metal Bat stared, then tightened his grip on his bat. That guy's insane strong. Even now, I can't guarantee my attacks would hurt him. I hope Blast can finish the job. If he can't manage it, then we all go together. God looked down at the 4 clusters of light in his hand, minglings of divine power and life force, colors warping and writhing as his life chi flared. Beside him, King hovered in the alternate dimension, barely able to move against the restraints of a powerful seal. Yet even shackled, King's strength had advanced noticeably. God had been watching him. He had trained this one personally, and he could feel the approach of a breakthrough. Distributing power to more dragon-level executives might create a balance against the Hero Association, But God did not want balance. He wanted an overwhelming leap. He made a gesture through the void, and a scene bloomed. On the real-world battlefield, the clash between Blast and Diamond Sperm threw shockwaves that shattered the planet's surface, thunderous booms reverberating across the landscape. "I give all 4 portions of divine power to you," God said coldly. "Do not disappoint me." Diamond Sperm, locked in a fierce duel with Blast, suddenly heard that indifferent voice in his ear. His spirits shot up like a rocket. Holy crap! I finally get a cheat, he thought, his madness redoubling as the power rose to meet him. In an instant, a small luminous core appeared behind Diamond Sperm, and 4 orbs of light brimming with potent life force shot out from it, all plunging into him at once. A searing heat tore through Diamond Sperm's body. His already formidable physique swelled even more, growing at an alarmingly fast rate. The aura he radiated made the surrounding space warp faintly. Everything happened too quickly. Even Blast couldn't react in time. Seeing Diamond Sperm's power spike explosively, Blast felt the skin on his scalp prickle. This is bad. This God Awakened was already dangerous, and God values him highly. I have to stop his ongoing evolution. As a chess player facing God, Blast could sense the divine power within Diamond Sperm continuing to expand. It was plainly a divine blessing fueling the evolution. Power given by another wasn't truly one's own, so if Blast could strike at the right moment and interrupt it, he might block Diamond Sperm's absorption. Spatial gravity fist! Blast narrowed his eyes and stepped forward. His fist shimmered with a silver light as terrifying gravity was added to them. He unleashed a frantic barrage, hundreds of punches per second. Dozens of circular spatial discs appeared in front of him, and Blast's fist struck them with pinpoint accuracy. The other ends of those discs materialized one after another around Diamond Sperm. At the very moment the fists were about to hit, Diamond Sperm showed nothing but disdain. Too slow and too weak. His body shuddered, and an energy shockwave laced with violent divine power burst outward from him, instantly obliterating all the surrounding discs. Blast frowned and angrily redirected his gravity punches, sending them smashing into the planet's surface. When his fists struck, an apocalyptic mushroom cloud rose slowly with a deafening explosion. Thousands of layers of Earth splintered and fell, then were forcibly yanked back by an invisible force. Realizing he could no longer stop Diamond Sperm, Blast felt a vein throb in his temple. Even as the mysterious powerhouse ranked #1, he didn't know what to do. With God backing his opponent, most of Blast's methods were useless. He couldn't even halt the other's evolution. He was truly in trouble. If he couldn't stop him from getting stronger, then at least he had to keep him trapped here. Blast slammed his fists together in front of his chest. Silver light poured from him, and the surrounding space was reinforced to unnatural stability. If such a God Awakened were allowed to go back to Earth, everything would be lost. While bolstering the planet's spatial integrity, Blast watched Diamond Sperm's transformation. The more he watched, the more his heart hammered with dread. Diamond Sperm had lost his old brilliant sheen. His body flowed like molten lava, scorching flames racing across his skin. As divine power and life force rampaged within him, his body visibly swelled until he became a sphere nearly 100 meters across. A grotesque sound accompanied Diamond Sperm's strained expression. He managed to compress all that energy inward, his form shrinking back to a normal 2-meter height. An invisible shockwave rippled outward, carving a 1,000-meter-deep chasm beneath his feet. The air itself warped from the heat. His muscular form was intact, but his surface no longer shone. It burned with inextinguishable golden flames. It wasn't ordinary fire. It was the manifestation of the terrifying life force surging from him. Sunsperm, appearance. Feeling power countless times greater than before, he bore himself like a ruler of heaven and earth. A look of intoxication crept over his face. Blast felt pressure bearing down on him and his pupils tightened. This guy, has he really become this powerful? Time to test his limits. Spatial slash! Blast's fingertips cut through the void, and space around Sunsperm's lower body cracked as if slashed by some invisible blade. Sunsperm only mocked him with a smile, then reached out and pressed a palm against his own lower body. With the sharp clang of metal, the rent space was forcibly pressed back together by that golden flame-covered palm. What? Blast's eyes widened. He hadn't expected Sunsperm to be able to recompress space like that. After receiving God's blessing, has he really become this strong? Blast's shock hardened into resolve. He would not give ground. Thinking of the lives on Earth, of everyone in the Hero Association, and of the hope of humanity resting on his shoulders, Blast's expression grew sterner. He absolutely could not let Sunsperm return. Then Sunsperm's voice came from behind him, lazy and amused. "Hey, old man, how long are you going to keep staring? I stopped being there a long time ago." Blast's pupils, seen behind his yellow goggles, contracted. In a flash of silver light, he activated his spatial ability and teleported tens of kilometers away. This speed was impressive. He truly was the most powerful God-awakened Blast had yet encountered. But Blast, who commanded spatial techniques, had confidence in his own speed. "I say, you've been dazing for 0.2 seconds. Why are you as slow as a snail?" Sunsperm taunted. A blur swam before Blast's eyes, and the towering figure, whole body wreathed in golden flames like a celestial god, already stood smiling before him. Blast flickered away again. At the same time, countless spatial disks appeared in the sky above the planet. Blast shuttled at a nearly invisible pace, blinking across the surface. But despite his frequent transfers, Sunsperm, relying on terrifyingly enhanced speed, always reached Blast the instant he materialized. After thousands of successive transfers, Blast's face had gone pale. The shock in his chest was beyond words. There had to be a limit to this speed, but Sunsperm still kept pace. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Sunsperm was lounging with his hands behind his head, reclining amid rings of white ripples. Those weren't ordinary air currents, but scattered sonic booms. Even on a planet with 10 times Earth's gravity, Sunsperm could still move at dozens of times the speed of sound without effort. At this point, he had consumed 6 portions of a god's power, 30% of that divine power, and had absorbed the life force of the other 4 dragon-level executives, fully stepping into the divine rank. Blast, only at the threshold of divinity and widely regarded as humanity's gatekeeper to that rank, naturally felt helpless against him. Seeing that even spatial travel couldn't shake Sunsperm off, Blast frowned. He stopped his constant shuttling through space and floated in midair by manipulating gravity. Sunsperm drifted to a spot 2 or 3 meters away. Golden flames licked his body and turned into a violent heat wave. Even without deliberately releasing his life energy, that heat alone was enough to raise the surrounding space by thousands of degrees and incinerate almost anything nearby. Blast didn't hesitate. He clenched his fists and pushed his gravity manipulation to the limit, compressing gravity tens of thousands of times into his fists. 20,000x gravity punch. This was the true limit Blast could control. The compression could only cover his fists. He couldn't sustain anything beyond that. Seeing the power packed into Blast's strike, Sunsperm raised an eyebrow, finally intrigued. "Not bad. Among the humans I know, you're already the second strongest. You should be proud." Then he moved. Thousands of fist shadows, wreathed in blazing fire, slammed toward Blast at near-light speed. Blast's 20,000 days gravity punch was drowned beneath the sky of incoming strikes, and the vast, sea-like divine power smashed through his defenses. Uff! Pain ripped through his body as his broad white armor shattered. Blast was hurled backward, crashing into the ground. Boom, boom, boom. Each impact funneled tremendous force into the planet. The world shook twice. Magma shot from fissures, earthquakes tore across the surface. The ground trembled, lava roared, the sky seemed to fall, and space itself quivered. Blast lay in a crater nearly a kilometer across, coughing blood. If he hadn't used a defensive technique at the last moment to divert the force, he would have been turned into mist on the spot. Sunsperm reappeared before him in an instant. Seeing Blast broken and bedraggled, his smile widened with pleasure. "So this is the mysterious powerhouse Blast, the ace of humanity? Not much to look at. Down in 2 punches, was he?" He straightened up and punched toward the sky with all his might. The shockwave radiated outward and shredded the space ahead like glass. Blast's pupils narrowed. The God Awaken's power exceeded anything he had imagined. If this being returned to Earth, humanity would be wiped out. Even the S-class heroes, pooling their strengths, would never be able to stand against him. Blast wanted to act, but Sunsperm glanced at him and asked casually, What are you going to do? A compressed beam of energy shot from Sun Sperm's fingertip, piercing Blast's legs and rendering him immobile. Sun Sperm sneered at the ruined hero, then slipped into the open spatial tier. As he vanished, his voice hung in the air. I won't kill you. You're one of the few humans who can still give me some entertainment. You're too weak to deserve death. This lord is the strongest. Ha! In the vast, lonely cosmos, a massive star burned quietly through nuclear fusion, bathing 7 planets in light and heat. The sun, the sole center of the system. 50,000 kilometers from that star, a dimensional rift opened briefly, then began to close within 2 seconds until it was nothing more than a slit. Eh! A puzzled exclamation came from inside the slit. A pair of hands in red rubber gloves gripped the top and bottom edges and pushed. With the sharp sound of glass breaking, the hands pulled the owner out, the bald demon king, Saitama. He stumbled free, turned toward the blazing, blinding star, and squinted, a smile spreading across his face. This looks like the sun. Am I back in the solar system? His superhuman vision locked on a blue planet in the distance, Earth. Saitama struck a breaststroke pose, kicked his legs back, and shot toward the planet at sublight speed. At the same moment, in the alternate dimension, the god there felt a chill in his heart, an uneasy premonition. Something was wrong. The moment Saitama returned to the solar system, God felt it. It was like a fierce tiger dozing in its territory, and suddenly a tank drove through. Any predator would bristle. God froze. He had overestimated this monster who transcended rules, but he still relied on the laws of physics. He had even used Saitama's ability to move faster than light as the basis for his timing. 2 light years should have taken at least 2 hours to cross. Instead, Saitama had traversed them in half an hour. Of course, these rule breakers could not be judged by normal cosmic laws. King, who by now could move freely inside the alternate dimension, noticed God's shock and smirked as he casually patted his shoulder. Why the sudden reaction? Let me guess, worried the bald demon king has come back? His smile broadened. The endless blood chi inside him surged like a boundless abyss. The fetters that had held him down crumbled faster and vanished. Well then, you'll have to deal with something even better. I'm strong enough to ignore your seal now. Double blessings, right? The smile stayed, but killing intent flared naked in King's eyes. Who could stand being pinned helpless for an hour, bones crushed a little at a time, while the earth they protected was invaded? Who could bear that? Seeing that King had completely broken the seal, God's confidence drained. His plan had been a blitzkrieg built on timing. Use powerful subordinates to destroy the Hero Association and seize Earth before King's seal broke and before that rule-transcending bald demon king returned. It had worked until now. But Saitama was back and racing toward Earth, and King had just leapt to a power equal to God's. It was the result of adaptation. King's ability, adapt to heaven and earth, was brutally effective. Against weaker opponents, he became immune in seconds. Against stronger ones, he climbed toward their level through repeated contact. Facing someone on God's level, sealing effects were weak, and God could no longer suppress him. Without hesitation, blood-red steam burst from King. Violent blood chi filled the alternate dimension. The reinforced space trembled as if it could not withstand the aura. King stared at his hands, incredulous, then clenched his fists. Am I already this powerful? The power inside him felt like an endless ocean, constantly fed into the death gate. The blood chi was inexhaustible. He could hold the death gate state as long as he wanted. It was almost his normal mode now. This was no ordinary death gate. This was the Death Gate Pro Max. God watched as King unleashed himself. Chaotic colors danced over King's body. Thousands of illusory stars appeared above the universe and crashed toward him with world-shattering might. King simply raised his fists and threw thousands of punches in an instant. Time seemed to stall. Then, with a deafening roar like a dragon, the fist shadows coalesced into surging blood chi dragons that ripped through every star they struck. Debris rained, explosions rocked the space, and King's gaze remained calm, even as the blood chi on him burned brighter. He no longer needed to rely on feats like Night Guy with his legs. Every single attack was Night Guy now. The blood chi amplified everything. Each punch and kick carried the force to shatter planets. He had become a super stat monster. Brutal damage from every angle. God tried to twist time and space to counter, but his vision blurred. The next instant, King's fist, charged with space-shattering force, slammed out and tore God's head from his body. Chaotic colors scattered. Even as a headless torso, God could still speak. Everything you do is in vain. Against you mortals, I am an immortal, indestructible existence. Even if your power now surpasses mine, what of it? Mortal strength can never harm a god who exists in a higher dimension. You will never reach my level. As he spoke, God frantically urged his sun sperm, already on its way to Earth, in his mind. If sun sperm reached the Earth dimension, it would shred the Hero Association in under 2 minutes. Then, even if King and that rule-transcending one dashed back, it would be too late. King kept punching. He blew God apart over and over, more than 100 times in a minute, but it became clear something was wrong. God didn't immediately heal or resurrect. Rather, King felt his blows not land on an opponent but on a phantom. It was like punching cotton, every strike dispersed as if it struck a projection. My attacks aren't actually hurting him, King realized with growing frustration. Still, someone else could destroy this thing with a single punch. With that thought, King stopped. He didn't hesitate any longer to continue the barrage. God's heart dropped. He felt the change and a cold dread crawled over him. He stopped hitting me. Has he figured it out? 146. I choose you, Guru. King felt God's mood shift. Just as he was about to leave, he frowned. Something about God's aura carried an urgent note. Could something major be happening on Earth? A few minutes earlier, God had sealed the portals between the alternate dimension and Earth, so King couldn't learn anything from those channels. He needed to get back as soon as possible. With that, King clenched his fist and threw a punch. The force, enough to shatter a planet with a single blow, concentrated into a single point and ripped a massive hole in the alternate dimension. God had been planning to taunt him a little longer, to keep King occupied so he could buy time. God didn't expect King to show no hesitation. King didn't even look back. He dove straight into the tier. As the alternate dimension crumbled and King disappeared, God froze in midair. He had no face to scowl with, but if he did, it would have been a hideous one. This was bad. Originally, if his minions failed to wipe out everyone in the Hero Association before that bald, rule-breaking man returned, God had been prepared to damage himself to lower his dimensions and personally destroy the world. He couldn't do that now. The image of King easily defeating him was too fresh. The reason God had maintained the image of being immortal and indestructible was that a low-dimensional being like King couldn't directly attack a high-dimensional being like God. If God reduced his dimensions, he wouldn't need the bald man at all. King would likely beat him to a pulp on the spot. If he couldn't enter the fight personally, God snapped into action. He opened a portal and began searching Earth for a host capable of bearing his power. He had used only 30% of his divine power to nurture the sun sperm. The other 70% had been spent suppressing King. Now that King had broken free, that 70% was available. One sun sperm wouldn't be enough. He needed someone who could evolve independently, grow without constant input, and become infinitely stronger in battle. It didn't matter how weak they were now. With a massive infusion of divine power, they would become formidable if they could continue to grow on their own. He couldn't risk another homeless emperor scenario. That pathetic attempt made him shudder, so this time he would control the body directly. Images of countless humans flashed through God's sight, his will pinned to a white-haired young man in a zebra-patterned prison jumpsuit. The hair stood up as if split down the middle with an axe. Muscles rippled beneath the cloth, and sharp eyes stared irritably at the ceiling. God smiled inside, his voice crossing space as he locked onto the youth. To think he possesses such immense potential. Guru, it's you. Meanwhile, back at the prison, Guru stretched lazily. His gaze wandered out the window and found himself looking toward the distant prison wall, still gaping where a huge hole had been smashed through it. That damn guy had left. A few days earlier, when Guru had been caught and shoved into this cell by King, a fellow inmate known as Sexy Prisoner had tried to mess with him and had been severely beaten. Since that day, Sexy Prisoner had realized Guru was no joke. Unable to dominate him, he had settled into an uneasy co-rule of the prison with Guru. Guru knew this was the perfect time to escape, but he chose not to. He wanted to stay, spar with Sexy Prisoner a while longer, and make sure he could crush him completely before leaving. Going out meant setting off on the path of hunting heroes. If he went weak and got slapped down by S-class heroes, it would be laughable. He was about to get out of bed when the floor disappeared under his feet. Suddenly, the world went dark, and his body collapsed into unconsciousness. When he opened his eyes, he was in a featureless darkness. Before him, a twisted humanoid figure reached out a hand. "Touch me, and I will grant you the greatest power," it said. "You will gain the strength to hunt every hero on Earth and become absolute evil." Guru couldn't tell what was happening, but he knew at once the creature meant harm. He sneered and moved to swat the hand away. "This great me doesn't care who you are," he snapped. "Hunting heroes is my business. Becoming absolute evil is my business. I don't want your power. Get lost." He slapped the hand away, but the humanoid made no angry sound. It simply withdrew its hand and nodded. "Physical contact achieved. You will receive my power and become my mightiest proxy in the human world." Garu's eyes widened. He hadn't even meant to touch it. He opened his mouth to curse the thing's entire lineage, but his mind was already growing fuzzy. Damn it. I've been tricked. A riot of distorted colors descended across the prison, coalescing into a pillar of light that stretched from the sky down into the void, and it all poured into Guru. His body transformed at a speed visible to the eye. His already tough frame became harder, denser. A cosmic sigil bloomed across his skin, its pattern like a scatter of distant stars. His human face began to be veiled by the vast, starlit expanse of the universe itself. The transformation lasted a full dozen seconds. During that time, one of the prisoners came to check after hearing a dull thud. "Boss Guru, you okay? I heard something fall. Did you roll out of bed?" If Sexy Prisoner had once been the feared overlord of this jail, the newly appeared Boss Garu was the inmates' last hope. Garu had strength, real strength, and could protect them from Sexy Prisoner's cruelty. To those men, Garu had already become a kind of savior. Silence answered him from the cell. The prisoner swallowed hard and forced himself closer. But when he came within 10 meters, something horrifying happened. It felt as if countless fine needles pierced his skin. His internal organs seemed to rot and break down at a visible speed. His legs gave out, his flesh slumped into a muddy pulp, and he collapsed, blood bleeding from every orifice, utterly lifeless. Inside the cell, Starry Sky Hungry Wolf rose slowly. The human-shaped body, sheathed in black and gold armor, flexed as its hands curled into fists. "As expected of the physical body I personally made," came a cold voice. "Excellent. With this human's innate potential, it can already grow without limit." God lifted his head. His divine thoughts swept the planet in an instant, locking onto a region where enormous energy fluctuations were erupting. "Found you." In a blur, his figure vanished, leaving only a streak of black light that lingered in the void. The entire prison went utterly quiet the moment God departed. All around, the sound of bodies collapsing echoed. Prisoners lay slumped, their dissolving flesh caked to zebra-striped uniforms. After its evolution, Starry Sky Hungry Wolf emitted intense cosmic radiation that killed everything nearby. And now, piloted by God, it was going to the battlefield. Meanwhile, in City Z, what was left of it, Child Emperor surveyed the ruined streets and frowned, the lollipop in his hand suddenly tasting like ash. "This is bad," he muttered. "The disaster was contained and only one city was destroyed, but it's a huge loss." He looked over the casualties. Flashy Flash, Sexy Prisoner, and a badly wounded Metal Bat lay where they had fallen. Tank Top Master was shrunken to a 1.2-meter shadow of himself. Even Tatsumaki, the Queen of Espers, was bloodied and badly hurt. The Hero Association had taken a catastrophic hit, its origin key severely drained. If Mr. King hadn't been here, they might not have merely suffered a crippling loss, they might have been wiped out. According to available intelligence, the 4 dragon-level monsters they had fought were only subordinates of that being, God. And Mr. King, as the number 44, had held God in check by himself, preventing the mastermind from making a single decisive move during the battle. Child Emperor's admiration for King deepened. He popped the lollipop back into his mouth, pulled out his laptop, and began tapping furiously to analyze the damage to City Z. Zombieman sat on a broken wall. After the explosions, his trench coat had been shredded away. He'd managed to salvage a dusty pair of pants. Bare-chested and awkward, he smoked in silence, eyes scanning for threats. Superalloy Darkshine ran a hand over the gouge in his forearm, irritation and a strange pride in his expression. Monster had taken a lot of muscle this time. How long would it take to rebuild? Still, with his self-awareness improved, Darkshine refused to lose confidence over a single injury. He'd find weaknesses to compare against and use them to fuel himself. Tank Top Master grabbed an intact chunk of rubble, gritted his teeth, and with a shout, his muscles bulged. He hefted the remaining 3/4 of a building onto his shoulders. My muscles may have shrunk, he panted, but my body, my tank top power, is still there. Everyone relaxed, well, as much as they could, waiting on two decisive outcomes: Mr. King's fight with the mastermind, God, and S-Class Rank 1 Blast's duel with the enemy's strongest dragon-level monster, Diamond Sperm. If both won, everything would be settled. Then an oppressive pressure descended so suddenly, all the S-Class heroes felt their hearts drop, as if a mountain pressed on their chests. Every gaze snapped toward a seemingly empty wasteland. A rift tore open in the sky above the ground, and a radiant figure stepped through, burning with golden light. He looked the group over, smiling faintly. "Not bad. You're all here. Saves me the trouble of hunting you down one by one." Child Emperor's lollipop shattered in his mouth. High-tech gadgets spilled out of his backpack. His eyes narrowed. Zombie Man drew two specially made pistols, their dark muzzles leveled at the newcomer with deadly calm. The figure's silhouette was painfully familiar. Tatsumaki went white, veins throbbed at her temple. Her delicate face twisted into furious disbelief. "You bastard! What did you do to Blast?" Chapter 148, All Cards Revealed. Tatsumaki was seized by a wave of pure panic. In her 28 years, she had fought countless battles, but never had she felt her mind go completely blank like this. Hadn't Blast already dragged this guy into a fight? And now this, Monster had shown up. She scanned the area frantically, but the man in the white combat suit with stubble was nowhere to be seen. Regret, pain, horror, anger, her inner world spun with 1,000 emotions. "I'm going to kill you," she screamed. Her psychic power surged into overdrive. A vast oceanic force burst from her, weaving into thousands of chains that locked Sunsperm in place. Trusting the lock, Tatsumaki's eyes hardened. She clenched her hands and the chains began to pull, intending to tear him apart. But against an above-dragon-level opponent, Sunsperm didn't even flinch. It was as if her attack was nothing. "Is this some kind of bondage play?" "Little sister, you're impatient," he said with a lazy smile, taking a step forward. The psychic chains shattered like glass. Tatsumaki was hit by a brutal backlash. Blood spurted from her eyes, nose, and mouth in an instant. In the same heartbeat, the other S-Class heroes struck back with everything they had. Superalloy Darkshine's muscles bulged like living steel, his skin glowing with a translucent sheen. He charged like a 100-ton truck hauling coils of metal, stamping craters into the ground as he raised a dark, gleaming elbow. Superalloy Rocket Elbow! Even in his 1.2-meter dwarf state, Tank Top Master threw his full weight into it, barreling forward with arms crossed, his speed nearly breaking the sound barrier. Tank Top Tackle! The high-tech weapons behind Child Emperor merged into a sleek azure cannon. A blinding blue beam screamed from its muzzle. Woof Woof Laser Destruction Cannon! Bang flickered into position behind Sunsperm. Seeing those raging golden flames, his face tightened. If he landed his strike, wouldn't his hand get burned? Still, the old master didn't hesitate. He pushed his martial arts to the edge, palms twirling with the blue intent of flowing water. Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist! Atomic Samurai closed in, his long blade flashing a cold, merciless light. His robes whipped in the gale as thousands of sword lights cleaved through space. Atomic Slash! Metal Bat had been punching himself repeatedly to build up his aura, each blow harder than the last until he'd knocked out teeth. Blood streaked his face, but he radiated raw violence. His swing sent white shockwaves through the air. Metal Bat Pummel! Watchdog Man, who never used named techniques and fought with pure instinct, had already reached Sunsperm. Razor claws sprouted on his forelimbs as he launched dozens of vicious slashes. Wild Slashes! Drive Knight chose not to fire. A long-range blast would have torn his allies apart. Instead, ports in his palms uncoiled into golden laser swords. Propelled by thrusters, he flew straight at Sunsperm, his body roaring with golden light like a miniature sun. Overdrive mode, laser slash. In an instant, every S-class hero threw their trump cards down, every ounce of power unleashed. The feeling in their guts told them if they didn't go all out right now, they'd die. Sunsperm didn't look nervous. He stretched as if bored and cracked his knuckles. "Cool special effects, but the punch is a little weak," he said. To ordinary eyes, the S-class attacks were already superhuman, leaving after images as they moved, but to him their speed was sluggish, slower than a snail. While they were still closing in, he casually did a few calisthenic stretches and, satisfied, flicked his head. Warm-up done. Time to end this. He strolled through their onslaught, waving a hand like he was apologizing to a crowd of ants. "Excuse me." Those two words were all it took. The fierce attacks collapsed. Ranged strikes were shattered, and the melee assaults were blown apart. Heroes were sent flying, blood spraying through the air like crimson beads. Zombie Man's torso exploded on the spot. Gun parts and an eyeball spun free. Bones cracked audibly across Superalloy Darkshine's body. His proud flesh split, and he collapsed like a broken porcelain doll. Bang tried to turn the force with his water-stream rock-smashing fist, but was still hurled through the ruins, bleeding from eyes, nose, and mouth. Drive Knight's crimson mechanical pupils whirred. His body lay smashed and sparking, his face registering total disbelief. Child Emperor's laser cannon was annihilated without leaving so much as a ripple. Metal Bat, Tank Top Master, and Atomic Samurai all lay in deep craters, beaten almost to death. The only hero who avoided harm was Watchdog Man. When Sunsperm said, "Excuse me," Watchdog relied on instinct and narrowly dodged the strike. 149. It's the Emperor engine. One actually slipped through the net. Sunsperm watched Watchdog Man, who had dodged his attack, with a flicker of interest in his eyes. His gaze swept across Child Emperor and the others who had avoided the hits with long-range strikes, and the corner of his mouth curved. "Before I get to someone interesting, I should clean up the small fry." Alarm bells shrieked in Child Emperor's head. He triggered every shield he had, stacking energy barriers around his body. In the next instant, a golden figure flashed past, and dozens of shields shattered like glass, turning to motes of energy that dissolved into the air. Child Emperor spat blood. A single punch ruptured the backpack on his back and sent him to his knees, strength leaking out of him. Sunsperm hadn't even tried to kill him. If he'd wanted to, that blow could have pulverized Child Emperor into nothing. "Kid, watch closely. See how the hero association you belong to comes to an end." Child Emperor heard the taunt. Blood smeared his face, and the crushing weight pinning his legs kept him from standing. He could only remain half kneeling. Without technology, he was just a smart kid. He lacked the superhuman body of other heroes and had no innate psychic powers. All he had was tech. His vision swam with blood as despair boiled in his chest. Is it over here? Is this the end for the Hero Association? The monster before him was so strong that even when S-class heroes attacked together, they had been defeated instantly. Child Emperor couldn't see a way to victory. Damn Metal Knight. A flash of resentment for a certain man in a white lab coat escaped his lips. That man was a traitor to humanity. Now, when Earth faced extinction, he had worried only about his own obsessions. He hadn't sent a single bit of support to this operation. Then a tall, blonde figure came to mind. At the image, the fear and despair in Child Emperor dissolved. He lifted his head. Eyes were filled with determination and hope. "We haven't lost yet. King is still fighting God. This guy is just one of God's subordinates at best. As long as King returns, we can win." Oi, oi, oi. If that's all you've got, these so-called heroes are laughably weak. Sunsperm stood in the center of the ruins, golden flames burning across his body. Around him, the major S-class heroes lay broken, hovering on the edge of death. A petite figure slowly rose, blood covering her and her black slit dress tattered and soaked red. Still she stood, fury bright in her eyes. "You damn beast! Tell me, what did you do to Blast?" Sunsperm blinked, then shrugged with innocent nonchalance. "I didn't do much. I just snapped all his limbs and left him to fend for himself on a planet about to collapse." "I'll kill you!" Rage flared from Tornado. She screamed and launched into the air. Her psychic power swelled into a vast tide and surged at Sunsperm. Useless, useless, useless. Your psychic power might be decent among humans, but to me, you're no better than a maggot. Ha! Sunsperm gave a single sweep of his palm, and a violent hurricane formed. Tornado's ocean of psychic power, everything she had, was smashed by that one strike. Her mind blanked and then was hit by searing pain. Depleted of her psychic energy, she clutched her head and collapsed. After dealing with the little one, Sunsperm turned to Watchdog Man, arrogance and mockery written across his face. Now, let's have some fun. Boom, 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 boom. Explosions and the roar of the ground shattering echoed through Z City's rubble. One white and one golden figure streaked through debris at blinding speed. Watchdog Man narrowly avoided Sunsperm's attacks each time, but the speed strain shredded his costume. When his pure white fur was caked with dust, Watchdog Man had no strength or options left. Repeated dodging and the energy ripples from Sunsperm's blows had severely damaged his internal organs. Seeing this, everyone felt despair. All the S-Class heroes had been rendered ineffective. Apart from King, who had gone to stall God, and Metal Knight and One Punch Man, who had yet to appear, the Hero Association's top forces had fallen. At that moment, a black stream of light galloped in from afar. A deep pit was blasted into the ground as a figure in black and gold armor rose from the dust, his face like a sky full of stars. You are. Sunsperm froze. The aura of divine power radiating from the newcomer was even denser than his own. Who is this? Another messenger of Lord God? God looked over. Without a word, the two traded a few silent impressions. Sunsperm's expression changed completely, and he dropped to one knee. Welcome, Lord God. What? Everyone was stunned. Child Emperor trembled. The light in his eyes flickered like a blown bulb. If even God had appeared, didn't that mean King's solo mission to stall God had failed? Blast, the #1 S-Class hero, had been taken down, and now even King, the strongest man on Earth, had fallen. Was there any hope left for humanity? No one could say. These were beings standing at the pinnacle of human strength, and in that instant, they felt nothing but powerlessness and despair. Then a series of deep, rhythmic thumps began rolling through the area, like thunder, steady and booming. Thump, 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 thump. The sound grew louder, resonating as if heaven and earth themselves answered. The light in Child Emperor's eyes flared back to life. His emotions spun like a roller coaster. His pupils narrowed. That sound, it's the Emperor engine. King is back. 150, soaring into the deep universe. The roar between heaven and earth grew louder, as if the world itself trembled. The space ahead shattered in an instant, forming an irregular passage. A tall, blonde figure stepped out slowly, blood-red steam radiating from him. While I was away, you stray dogs have been quite arrogant. The low voice echoed through everyone's ears. Seeing that tall silhouette, the people who had been drowning in despair felt as if they'd been given a sedative. A calm certainty replaced their panic. If King had appeared, surely he would lead them to victory. That was the true worth of a legend. God bent low, and the aura pouring from him surged outward at terrifying speed, blanketing the surrounding dozens of miles in an instant. He intended to intensify that release and directly finish off the already gravely wounded S-Class heroes. Even if King showed up, what then? God would already have achieved his goal and would be able to seize the origin of this planet. This world held a special luck that spawned many warriors famed even across the universe. The S-Class heroes of the Hero Association were examples of that. In most parts of the cosmos, such powerhouses might appear only once every dozens or hundreds of planets. Here they clustered. Because someone on this planet had transcended the rules, humans here all carried the potential for extraordinary breakthroughs. Only the degree of potential differed. That potential tempted many down the wrong road. They did break through, but emerged twisted, malformed. They became monsters. Because the planet's luck was bound to its living beings, if God wanted to take it all, he first had to kill those powerful life forms that held the greatest share of it, namely the S-Class heroes before him, the pinnacle of humanity. As for King and that rule-transcending being, they weren't even part of the calculation. King was at best a stowaway. When he slipped onto this world, didn't matter. A stowaway was still a stowaway. And the rule transcender? That was a blatant cheat. God's attack came with brutal suddenness. King's eyes narrowed. Blood chi erupted from him in full, turning the sky and earth behind him a deep crimson. The vast, majestic blood chi hung in the air like a blazing sun, clashing head-on with God's aura and forcing it back. With every step King took forward, God's energy crumbled bit by bit and was pushed back into him by sheer force. Sunsperm, who had stood frozen to the side since King appeared, finally moved. From the moment he'd seen King, fear had gripped him so deeply his body had locked up. King's shadow still haunted him. King had chased him and the other dragon-level executives like dogs and casually slapped Monster King Orochi to death. Sunsperm bowed his head, stared at his body wreathed in golden flames, felt the starry vastness of power within him, and the fear melted away. Yeah, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of? I possess the power of God now, and God is standing right here beside me. Why should I fear anyone? Why should I fear a mere human? Should I back down from him? His expression turned fierce. In the next instant, he closed the gap and threw a punch capable of cleaving half a planet. That kind of blow, forget the S-class heroes present, even the divine rank gatekeeper Blast would struggle to contend with it. King's face didn't even twitch. He calmly extended a single finger. Sunsperm's fist smashed into it with catastrophic force, but the anticipated explosion never came. The collision was eerily quiet. What? Sunsperm's pupils pinched to points. He refused to believe it and pushed harder. Golden flames flooded his body, turning him into a radiant sphere. King's look remained unchanged, as if he were facing nothing more than an insignificant insect. If this is all the power you have, then there's no need for you to live, King said simply. He opened his palm, caught Sunsperm's fist, lifted him, and flung him into the air. Suspended, Sunsperm was dumbstruck. God folds his arms across his chest, his black and gold armor glints in the sunlight, and the deep, starry cosmos that covers his face slowly turns. I truly didn't expect you to be this strong. You live up to being a stowaway from another world, he says. He turns his head and scans the area. Where is that bald-headed one who supposedly exists outside the rules? Didn't he come with you? What a pity. I won't be able to catch you both in one net. Behind God, overwhelming cosmic radiation has already stained the world purple, leaving nothing but death and desolation in its wake. King's mouth curves into a smirk. The land behind him is swamped in raging blood chi, pushing back against the filling cosmic energy, even showing signs of suppressing it. King's presence as a powerhouse is off the charts, but his words are irreverent. Why's this maggot hiding in the shadows, pretending to be some big shot? Catch us all in one net? If Saitama really showed up, you'd soil yourself. Besides, King flashes forward and clamps a hand around God's head. An irresistible, terrifying force erupts from his palm. I don't think you can beat me, even if you turn your face into the starry sky, he says. He stomps, blood chi flaring like wildfire, then grips God's head and rockets into the sky. In an instant, they streak away from Earth as a crimson comet. God guesses King's intention and bristles. Does this guy want to choose a battlefield far away from Earth? What a troublesome fellow. But thinking you can drag me off Earth with just brute force, that's wishful thinking. God suddenly swings his fist. The surface of his hand is surrounded by a brilliant galaxy. Destructive energy ripples within as he smashes it forward. A violent explosion blooms above Earth, the shockwave tearing apart several nearby satellites. King simply raises his palm and catches God's fist. His lips move, though there's no medium for sound in space. The blood chi his body has condensed into substance serves as one. God hears two words as clearly as if spoken aloud. Blast. A blood-soaked figure appears at King's side. The middle-aged man tosses away the shattered goggles on his face, raises his hands with a laugh, and calls out, "Keep it up, King, our man. I'll leave this godfellow to you." King had been slower than Sunsperm because he'd chosen to rescue Blast first, bringing him back to Earth. He found Blast by following the spatial traces left where Blast and Diamond Sperm had vanished, tearing open the pocket dimension and hauling out the half-dead man. The reason King prioritized Blast becomes obvious in that instant. This was exactly the moment he'd hoped for. At the sight of Blast, God goes rigid. It's that human who can use spatial abilities. Not good, but it's already too late. Bleeding from his 7 orifices, Blast forces together the spatial energy he barely controls and engulfs the two far stronger powerhouses. Spatial transfer. The air roars. The space around King and God twists into a vortex and then vanishes. King and God are gone. Blast floats alone in the starry void, his face slick with blood. He coughs as if choked, but a faint smile tugs at his lips. I'm old. As expected, taking on God is best left to the new generation. His attempt at cool detachment is ruined by a coughing fit. Blood fills his throat, and he hacks until he can barely breathe. Better get back to Earth first. He raises his hand to use spatial power and return, but nothing happens. A deep, spreading weakness from the core of his being seeps outward. This is bad. The spatial power was completely exhausted in the transfer. How to get back now? He stares at the blue planet below, floating like a dead piece of space junk. You look pathetic, Blast. First time I've seen you this beat up. A holographic projection flickers into being before him. Indistinct-faced figures appear on the other side of the image and regard him with half-smiles. Get lost, Blast jokes through gritted teeth. Even smiling hurts. The opponent was God himself, and there was the most powerful God awakened in history. It's a miracle I'm not dead. After a beat of silence, the figures laugh together. True enough. You're tough, kid. Let's send you back to Earth first. Those injuries aren't light. Blast relaxes as if a weight had lifted. Spatial fluctuations gather around him. Teleportation is about to activate and send him back to Z City, now a wasteland. Before he goes, he overhears a question from his teammates. Is it really okay to leave God to that king, who's known as the title? A brilliant smile spreads across Blast's face despite the pain. He forces a thumbs up with his battered arm. I guarantee King can expel God. He's much stronger than I am. With that, Blast lets go of his guard. The world blurs, the teleportation triggers, and he's gone. Meanwhile, near Jupiter, the world-devouring blood chi dragon still gallops through the starry void. Though it's gradually shrinking, its momentum remains fierce. Sunsperm is held fast in the dragon's maw. 2 rows of dragon teeth formed from blood chi bite down like 10,000-year divine iron. No matter how he attacks, he can't break them. Are you kidding me? Why can't I even knock this thing away? He yells, launching punch after punch. Each blow sends rippling shockwaves through space, shaking the surrounding fabric. Sunsperm is, after all, divine rank. He lands attack after attack, but finally, under the relentless assault, the dragon's head fractures into crimson fragments and shatters. Damn, I finally broke free, he spits. He wipes at the bloody hole in his abdomen, then watches it knit itself back to normal. He stands panting, staring at Jupiter looming close and feeling the constant pull at his body, and blinks. By the way, where is this? Having barely studied astronomy, he has no idea which planet he's in. He looks around, dazed, as the mighty planet looms under his feet, and the blood chi still thrums in his veins. 152. I refuse to accept this. Sunsperm drifted in the black between stars, fighting the tug of Jupiter's gravity and staring around in stunned silence. What was that enormous planet? And that other world with a ring of pale yellow light? Where on earth had he been sent? Before he could make sense of it, a slightly bemused voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Huh? It's alive? Are you an alien? Hello? The voice hit him like a bolt of lightning. Where did a person come from out here in the void? Sunsperm's form shimmered several thousand meters away before he dared to turn and look. Floating nearby was a completely naked, shaved-headed man, dust clinging to him, staring with casual curiosity. Oddly, though there was no medium to carry sound in space, The man's words slid right into Sunsperm's head as if physics had been politely ignored. Why aren't you speaking? I almost forgot. Aliens don't seem to know human languages. Can you send brainwaves? Sunsperm bristled. He was a native monster of Earth, not some alien. And why did this guy look so familiar? That shiny bald head clicked a file open in his memory. Of course, the emblematic bald head belonged to the S-Class hero One Punch Man. When he'd been with the Monster Association, Sunsperm had read through dossiers on all the S-Class heroes. A shining bald head was One Punch Man's trademark. So this was just a small-time S-Class hero. That made things easy. Confidence surged. Sunsperm twisted his neck, golden flames roaring over his body until he was almost a sheet of light. Oi, oi, oi. Not sure how you survived out here, but since you ran into me, you might as well die. He smashed against the fabric of space and lunged. His fist, packed with a blast comparable to a nuclear detonation, slammed into Saitama's face. Boom, boom, boom. A golden energy storm exploded outward from the point of impact, a shockwave that rippled across the surrounding void and made everything within hundreds of miles vibrate. But despite the terrifying power, Sunsperm's smug grin froze. His hand felt as if it had struck solid steel, numb and painful with no give. Saitama stood unmoved, head resting against Sunsperm's fist, his expression cooling. I'm telling you, are all aliens this rude? Punching me the moment we meet. And you speak Earth language. Why pretend you can't? Saitama watched him, unconcerned. Then he simply clenched his fist and threw a plain, unadorned punch. Sunsperm's mind went blank. Instinct took over. He braced and flared the golden flames into a shield, but it was too late. Saitama's blow landed square on his abdomen with a dull thud. Urgh! It felt like being struck by a speeding asteroid, a force so massive it pierced him through, driving him backward like a cannonball. He became a flaming meteor that smashed into Jupiter's gaseous surface, carving a massive hole and letting part of the impact dissipate into the planet. He knelt in the void, golden blood spurting from his mouth, terror filling his eyes. Holy crap, One Punch Man, for real. After evolving so many times, after reaching the ultimate life form, he hadn't expected to be crushed so effortlessly by this bald man. He had killed almost all the S-Class heroes before. This shouldn't be happening. Why? Why? I refuse. Rage twisted his face. The wound in his abdomen knit shut instantly, and his whole body detonated with power. He surged across thousands of miles in an instant and dove straight at Saitama. Die! Saitama blinked. The attacker hadn't died from his previous blow and had come back swinging. That piqued his interest. An opponent who didn't fall with one punch was intriguing. Saitama's calm flickered into a small grin. He decided to up his effort by a couple of ticks, just to see what would happen. Bang! Before Sunsperm could react, an unadorned fist struck his chest. The impact crushed him, and a terrifying storm of force roared out behind him, skimming away the surface of Jupiter in a trembling wash. Sunsperm's expression scrambled from the punch. His brain blanked out for a heartbeat. After 0.1 seconds, he finally came to, eyes wide with terror. Seeing Saitama so close up, all the confidence he had built on raw power evaporated. Gua, don't come near me. He was truly broken. The first impact had almost let him taste death. This guy was not someone he could face. He needed to get away, fast. Sunsperm turned and fled without hesitation, his body streaking through the void realm. Once he left the resistance of atmosphere behind, his speed shot toward light-like velocities, and he vanished from the surface of Jupiter in an instant. Hurry. Leave. The planet receded behind him as he tore through the starfield, constantly glancing back in panic. Only after the gleaming, marinated egg bald head was no longer in sight did he let out a shaky breath. Humph, good thing I have super speed. He's only human. You run fast. Are you a speed-type monster? With all that fire, you look like an internal combustion engine, huh? The familiar voice whispered in his ear, and his soul shuddered. He craned his head and saw the completely naked bald man hovering ahead, arms outstretched like Superman in mid-flight, dull eyes fixated on him. Sunsperm wanted to scream and had no tears left. He could not stand this. Why can't I shake him off? Saitama's interest only deepened. The punch he'd thrown a moment ago had been right at the edge of a normal punch, yet it hadn't finished the opponent. That excited him. It had been ages since he'd met someone so durable. Since he'd lost all his hair, the last person who'd matched that kind of resistance was his friend King, the legendary king of durability. Under the bald Demon King's intense gaze, Sunsperm felt the pressure in his chest spike and ramped his speed even higher. Desperation pushed his potential, letting him draw more fully on the divine power inside him. His strength climbed. Still, he didn't dare stop. The bald man had made a deep psychological scar that wouldn't heal. The chase dragged on for nearly 20 minutes. The sun behind them fell away. Their only light became the Milky Way itself. Sunsperm's searing golden flames were now the brightest light in that endless darkness. His eyes were bloodshot, and he teetered on the edge of collapse. What kind of joke is this? Beside him, Saitama kept a lazy flying posture, as if he were idly playing. He was enjoying it, a durable opponent made for a good toy. The bald Demon King always felt a kind of patience toward anyone who survived even one of his punches. He could usually judge how cruel a monster had been from their durability, whether they were vicious or benign. Strangely, this Sunsperm, though terrifyingly powerful, had hardly killed any humans. He was, undeniably, a good monster. Consecutive normal punches. Saitama held near light speed and unleashed hundreds of thousands of red fist afterimages. Every punch carried fierce winds, a crushing force that could cleave space itself. Sunsperm's face went white. He scrambled into a defensive stance, but some blows still dimmed the flames around him, and hairline cracks spidered across his form. The impacts blurred his consciousness. His life force drained, and he bled from his 7 orifices. So strong, he thought. This is someone I can't beat. Despair sank in. The same helplessness S-class heroes must feel before him. No matter what he tried, he couldn't escape, couldn't fight back effectively. His strongest attacks merely tickled the man. At this point, only those with iron wills to survive or pure fools refused to give up. Sunsperm fell into the former category. Cornered, he would strike back desperately. Even a trapped rabbit bites, a divine rank monster, would do far worse. Blazing sun! He spat golden blood, and the flames around his body exploded outward, consuming him until he was almost an actual sun. Overwhelming heat warped the surrounding space. Countless tongues of gold converged and compressed into a single beam of light, suffused with divine rank pressure and ruinous force. "I'll take you with me! God-slaying cannon!" Saitama watched the display with a flicker of envy. He straightened in the air and stretched, rolling his joints a couple of times before raising his right fist. Serious series, serious punch. No flashy effects accompanied it, just raw, crushing power that shook the heavens. Sunsperm truly was a divine rank monster, even stronger than Boros in his collapsing star, roaring cannon form. The god-slaying cannon he'd unleashed by burning his life force was even more devastating than Boros's attack. If Boros could level a planet's surface without touching the core, Sunsperm's blast could pulverize a world to atoms. The fist met the god-slaying cannon head-on in the starry void. In an instant, the starry sky trembled. Sunsperm had thrown everything into staying alive. He'd even burned his life origin to power the god-slaying cannon. The crimson beam roared with destructive energy, enough to turn a planet into cosmic dust, and it only grew more terrifying as it poured outward. And then a plain fist punched straight through it. Boom, boom, boom. An energy shockwave ripped outward from the point of contact. The god-slaying cannon split in two and was blasted away into the far reaches of the universe. A small celestial body, barely a planet, had been rotating slowly in its orbit when the crimson beam impaled it. Bang! The world was pierced and detonated from within. Its surface flared crimson and then disintegrated into cosmic dust. Saitama looked down. His fist had a tiny, almost insignificant scratch. It vanished the next second, but the brief mark made his eyes light up. "Not bad," he said. "You actually managed to hurt me. You gave me a surprise." Sunsperm was spent. His body had withered. Once raging golden flames were now little flickers. He had nothing left. Hearing Saitama's casual praise that cut like a blade, shattered him. The attack he had given his all to had been, in another's eyes, nothing more than a graze. Since his evolution, Sunsperm had looked down on humans as ants, weak, sinful, beneath him. That arrogance was the curse of the powerful. Now, confronted by something overwhelmingly stronger, he finally understood how small he was. There was only one way left to survive. His expression turned desperate. Like a streak of dark gold light, he hurled himself through the void realm, moving with the reckless momentum of someone who had nothing to lose. Eh? You're coming again? But you look almost dried up. Saitama watched, a faint confusion in his eyes. He respected courage, even when he didn't understand it. Since Sunsperm showed this kind of guts and such disregard for life, Saitama decided to give him one more punch as a sign of respect. He raised his fist quietly, ready. When they were less than 100 meters apart, Sunsperm suddenly dropped into a sliding kneel and tore across the void realm for over 100 meters. When he reached Saitama, he kowtowed so hard the void realm itself cracked. This lowly one failed to recognize your greatness. Please give me another chance. Let me serve you like an ox or a horse. I want to be your pet. I am one of your own. Saitama got goosebumps. He didn't know whether to punch him or not. After a long, helpless sigh, he lowered his fist. The creature had thrown away its pride and begged for mercy. Killing him now felt wrong. Sunsperm kept kowtowing, frantic and humiliated, until Saitama finally asked, awkwardly, you want to be my pet? Sunsperm's eyes flooded with hope. He bowed faster, his head a blur, voice frenzied. Yes, Lord. I have yearned to be part of humanity since I was young. Today I can finally show my devotion. I'm one of your own. I'm not great at raising pets. Do you eat dog food? Does the Lord want me to be a dog? Of course. No problem. I am your most loyal little dog. Woof, woof, woof. Tone down the flames on your body, or you'll burn the furniture. Yes, master. Understood. Master. Woof, woof, woof. Actually, if you're going to play a dog, you don't need to add 3 woofs after every sentence. Yes, master. Woof, woof, woof. Forget it. Whatever. And with that, Saitama flew back toward Earth, dragging the fawning Sunsperm along. He hadn't expected to pick up a powerful pet on a simple return trip. Sunsperm felt his frayed heart settle. He'd heard that One Punch Man was on very good terms with Zero. He was safe now. Apart from Zero and this bald man with monstrous strength, no one else on this world concerned him. With Saitama, he could finally be at ease. Then an angry voice cut through his thoughts, furious, betraying words echoing in his mind. You dare yield to the enemy. You are unworthy of my power. I shall take it back. Sunsperm's vision shifted. The next moment, he was in a pure white mental space. Before him stood a tall, twisted humanoid like a pillar supporting the heavens, anger radiating off it. You carried so much of my power, and yet you yielded to a human. You are unworthy of my strength. God reached out to reclaim the divine power within Sunsperm. And then another voice, confused, complaining, suddenly chimed in. What was the designer thinking? There are white walls everywhere. Isn't the glare a bit much? Both God and Sunsperm froze and looked in disbelief at the bald man who had just appeared in that white space. Brothers, definitely 3 chapters today. Can you give the author a free nudge and show some support? Love you guys. 155. Has the options module come back to life? Seeing the suddenly appearing bald man, God felt his emotions flatten into a steady calm. He had reached the point where nothing the bald Demon King did could genuinely shock him anymore. This fellow seemed to exist outside the rules, so even breaking into someone else's 13th space without explanation no longer seemed strange. But what was he here for? God eyed Sunsperm with suspicion. From Sunsperm's perspective, he just watched this newcomer shamelessly call someone his master. In other words, the master the newcomer acknowledged was coming get him. At that thought, pressure exploded in God's chest. In the real world, he was still locked in combat with a monster that kept growing stronger. If another heaven-defying bald man joined the fray, it would be game over. God began frantically thinking of retreat. Maybe I should abandon this invasion. After all, Sunsperm, my strongest subordinate, had just defected. How could I possibly face 2 otherworldly monsters alone? Better to run back to the one. No matter how strong King was, he was ultimately just a 2 with great power. If I escape to the one, the other party can't reach me. The only worry was whether that absurd bald man would punch through the passage between low and high dimensions. Forget it. Try to retreat first and worry about being punched to death later. As for Sunsperm, God glanced at him and prepared to withdraw his divine power. A subordinate who can't be controlled should simply be crushed. Noticing the power inside his body being sucked away, Sunsperm's face went white with terror. He charged across his own pure white mental space, executed a dramatic sliding kneel for hundreds of meters, landed precisely in front of Saitama, and began kowtowing with frenzied sincerity. "Master, save me. This guy wants to take your little pet to the slaughterhouse. I'm not afraid to die. I only fear that if I die, I won't be able to keep accompanying Master." Sun Sperm choked with feeling, tears flowing as he painted himself as the sorrowful follower who couldn't bear to leave his master. Saitama wanted to ask, "Have we known each other half an hour? Must you be this sentimental?" But Sun Sperm was, after all, a newly acquired pet. That thing that looked like a tangle of mops. Someone actually wanted to send Saitama's pet to the slaughterhouse? Saitama's displeased gaze landed on God. "Oi, you should at least look at the master before you hit the dog. You want to send my pet to the slaughterhouse without a word? That's rude, you know?" As he spoke, Saitama threw a punch. Even inside Sunsperm's mental world, the blow retained its full force. Boom! God's mental form didn't even have time to react. It was blasted apart on the spot into wisps and threads of light. With the suction inside him gone, Sunsperm realized his former controller had been obliterated by his new master. "Gwa! Long live Master! We love and honor you," he cried. Saitama touched an imaginary head, helpless at the sight of Sunsperm fawning like a devoted dog. "Looks like I picked up something unusual." 3 light years away from Earth, God's actual body convulsed and blood spurted from his mouth. His vision blurred. The 13 fragment he had split off had been destroyed by that single punch, and he hadn't even had the chance to withdraw his power. With his mental projection blown apart, the backlash hit his main body hard. The fight between Saitama and Sunsperm had seemed long, but in reality it was over in under 20 minutes. During those 20 minutes, King had already traded blows with God several times. King's entire body still blazed with a crimson 9, as deep and bottomless as an abyss and as vast as a sea. The 9 was so fierce it made the dark, silent, starry sky bleed red. He looked at God, whose aura had weakened slightly, and seemed to piece things together. But King didn't press the advantage. Instead, he watched the ethereal blue data panel that suddenly appeared before him. Ding! Congratulations to the host for triggering an option. Holy crap, has the options module come back from the dead? Since transmigrating to this world, King hadn't seen the system issue a new option in ages. It had only been broadcasting his attribute updates daily. Ever since his 6 was broken, his attributes had grown slowly even without deliberate cultivation, but options had only appeared when he first arrived. If this option hadn't popped up now, he'd have assumed the early options were just a starter gift. 2 blue data panels hovered before him. Option 1, beat the god in front of you mercilessly until he kneels, to show this low-dimensional invader who fancies himself a higher being that there's always someone better. That is what a supernumerical monster with infinite adaptation can do. Option 1 reward, system item Ganj 2, random ability enhancement 1. Option 2, stall for time with the god in front of you until the bald demon king arrives, then kill him with overwhelming thunderous force. A true powerhouse must be calm, prepared, and comprehensive to accomplish great things. Option 2, reward, random ability enhancement Teps 1, all attributes increased by 5%. King's eyes flicked over both panels and locked onto Option 1. Option 2 wasn't his style. An across-the-board attribute boost was useless to him compared to the tangible items from the Phi 11 that Option 1 promised. The combat increase from those items would far surpass a mere 5% stat buff. "System, I choose Option 1, he said. "Ding, congratulations to the host for choosing Option 1. The reward will take effect after defeating the god in front of you." 156, Great War. After accepting the option, King looked up at the god as his 6 flared more violently than before. Blood chi swirled through the starry sky. Eager to claim the prize and fueled by years of suppression, King surged forward. In an instant, he closed tens of thousands of meters, and a several thousand-meter-long blood chi dragon roared into being ahead of him and lunged at the god. Sensing the change in King's 6, the god leaned forward. The void realm beneath him erupted with chaotic energy. He became a streak of light and darted out. The violent blood chi dragon and the god's chaotic, colorful streak of light collided with cataclysmic force. A colossal shockwave rippled outward. The void realm quaked and space itself began to splinter under the impact. The chaotic light gnawed at the dragon until fine cracks appeared across its length, as if it might collapse any moment. Then the blood-chi dragon started to shrink, as if a black hole had opened at its core, twisting everything toward a single point. The dragon dissolved, and King emerged in its place, his whole body wreathed in burning crimson blood chi. He had no intention of sustaining the dragon form. Those flashy effects were better as area of effect skills for clearing fields. With his attributes now, channeling all that power into his own body was the strongest way to fight. The god saw through his intention. The starry sky patterned on his face trembled, then shifted, taking on King's likeness. Violent, overwhelming blood chi erupted from his body too, forming a red pillar of light that bridged heaven and earth in that starry firmament. The god had copied King's state. His attributes had risen to match King's, putting them on equal footing. King didn't hesitate. He pushed through the fracturing void realm and threw a heavy punch, seething with boundless blood chi. Wearing King's face, the god poured the ocean-like blood chi inside him into a counterstrike. Boom, boom, boom. That patch of the starry sky became an ocean of blood chi. Space itself kept shattering from the compression. Without air resistance, the two crimson streaks flashed and collided again and again in the vastness. Each collision set off muted detonations across the starry void. The god's fist, bearing energy comparable to a nuclear blast, smashed into King's face as the heavens roared. King stood his ground and answered with an equally powerful blow that struck the god's head and sent him flying. This guy got stronger again, the god muttered, astonished. He had duplicated King's state, yet in that exchange he felt King's stats pull ahead. Is it that zero? What a disgusting skill. As a high-dimensional being with vast knowledge, the god understood immediately. In his condition, his attacks were being continuously adapted to by King. Damage would be reduced over time, possibly to nothing, and by adapting, King's body was evolving, growing stronger. You have ways to get stronger, but you think I don't? The god snarled. He pressed his palm to his face and wiped away the copied visage, then duplicated the now stronger King again. His own, 6, surged higher. Both combatants kept growing. King increased his power by adapting to the god's assaults. The god countered by immediately copying King's improvements. It was a vicious, ascending loop. Each improvement by one was mirrored by the other. For a while, neither could secure a lasting advantage. As soon as one's stats rose, the others rose too. King landed another devastating punch that sent the god tumbling through the void realm, unable to stop himself. The god hurtled like a cannonball and smashed into a nearby barren planet. The impact created a crater thousands of meters across. Amid the dust-storm sky, the god clawed himself out of the crater, his black and gold armor crazed with cracks. He clenched his fists. What a troublesome creature. All three should just die, he spat. But the god also sensed a structural problem. Although he could continually copy King's attributes to match him, there was a rule. He could only copy after King had already grown stronger. In other words, King had to change first. At their level, even a delay of 0.01 seconds could be decisive. If King became stronger for a mere 0.1 seconds and the god copied those attributes 0.1 seconds later, then in that brief window, the god might take several heavy blows and suffer significant damage. As the god pondered this, another crimson streak descended. King pressed his advantage without pause. The god lunged too. They collided on the planet's surface, the force uplifting the ground into a titanic wave of rubble that rushed toward the horizon. A quarter of the planet's surface was annihilated by that strike. Gravity soon hauled the shattered debris back, and the planetary crust began to tremble as if it would split apart. King and the god tangled again and again. Under their relentless exchange, the planet's surface was pulverized beyond recognition. Dust swirled permanently through the sky, and bright red magma gushed from the core. The scene was apocalyptic. 157. It seems your adaptability has reached its limit. Bang, bang, bang! Violent explosions rocked the planet's surface, turning sky and ground into a kaleidoscope of fire and stone as the world itself began to break apart. Amid a rain of shattered rock, two streaks of light collided again and again. Their punches and kicks were simple and unadorned, but each strike carried the full weight of divine power. At their level, techniques had lost their flourish. Power was a number, and the higher number crushed the lower. King's fist slammed toward the six with a thunderous boom. The six had no intention of dodging. There was no time, so he simply met the blow head-on, raising his own fist. Chi and bone collided in an instant. A seething, violent wave of energy burst from their point of impact, ripping the ground into dust and opening a bottomless black void. Their fists stayed locked for less than a tenth of a second. In the next heartbeat, the six's hand shattered, spraying a mist of blood. King's strength had grown again. He had adapted to some of the six's power and defenses, and that adaptation kept improving. Seeing his ruined fist, the six realized King had increased his force substantially this time. To avoid being numerically overwhelmed, the six copied King's new strength and rejoined the fight. As the barrage continued, King noticed with mild surprise that his minor wounds were healing more slowly than before. Leaning closer, he saw chaotic, multicolored lights swirling on the surface of the cuts. Is that the six's power? This is troublesome. For King, this was the first opponent to give him real trouble. Compared to his battle with Boros, the six was far more vexing. Not only did King's injuries no longer vanish instantly, the opponent also matched him blow for blow. Whatever King adapted to, the six mirrored. Even if King could continually grow stronger through adaptation, the six would keep copying that increase, keeping their numerical levels in lockstep. A faint smile tugged at King's lips as an idea formed. The planet had long been reduced to a wasteland. Magma gushed from ruptured crust. The ground trembled as if ready to fall apart. Then the six noticed something unusual. King's strength had stopped rising. In the early moments of the fight, King had grown stronger almost every few seconds. Now, after more than 10 seconds of combat, his numerical level had stabilized. A thought struck the six. Could it be that this one's adaptation has finally reached its limit? It should have hit that cap long ago. From the six's perspective, King's adaptive ability bordered on blasphemy. He grew so strong, so fast, and could almost ignore seals. Such an all-encompassing adaptation had to have an upper bound, otherwise it would be indistinguishable from cheating. It looked like King had reached that bound. He wouldn't adapt to my attacks again in the short term. With that in mind, the six hatched his own plan. Both combatants prepared traps, but outwardly, they fought as if they simply wanted to kill each other, savoring the pure thrill of battle. When King's fist brushed the six's head, the six seized the opening. He stepped forward, chaotic light flaring from his right palm, and fired an energy blast charged with divine power straight at King's face. Boom, boom, boom. King barely dodged. A graze hit part of him, but his thick chi armor absorbed most of the residual energy. The blast, however, did not stop at the surface. It drove down through the cracked crust and plunged into the planet's core. The explosion in the core was the last straw. The planet's internal energy began to collapse. The instability would soon reach a critical point. A violent detonation would turn the world into cosmic dust. Without hesitation, the six shot upward, becoming a streak of light that tore through the clouds, putting distance between himself and the dying world. Even for beings of their stature, being caught in a planet-scale explosion would be grievously damaging, if not fatal. King planned to follow, but before he could clear the atmosphere, hundreds of chains, each wrapped in shifting, chaotic hues, erupted from the ruined ground and snatched him back. They were impossibly fast. Even King couldn't shrug them off. They dragged him down and bound him to the planet. Looking up, King saw the six floating amid the star-scattered void. He appeared slightly hunched, as if something had drained him. His form was weakened, but still dominant. He spread his arms and loomed over the soon-to-explode world like an indifferent creator. Slowly, he lowered his gaze to the figure pinned to the surface and mocked. "It seems your adaptability has reached its limit. You probably can't adapt to these chains in a short time either. I made them by burning my life origin and fusing it with this planet's internal energy. Even you would need dozens of seconds to break free. So tell me, how many seconds until this planet explodes?" He held up 3 fingers and curled them one by one. 3, 2, 1. Boom, boom, boom. The planet detonated in a blinding flash, savage shockwaves shuddering through the surrounding void realm. 158. Look at yourself. Are you even speaking human language? The 12 towered in the void realm, arms spread wide as he basked in the violent energy unleashed by the 10's explosion. It was like a firework blooming across the universe, brilliant, dazzling, the finest display in this cold, lonely, starry sky. A powerful divine thought swept over the 10 at the center. Though the aftermath of the blast had disrupted the scan, the Posh 12 could make out one thing clearly. All life at the epicenter had been obliterated. Finally, blown to pieces. What a tenacious creature. Since coming into consciousness, the 12 had never met an opponent like this. The blast squad had only ever been annoying insects to him. But King had been different. He had ruined the 12's plans and actually stood against him in direct combat. Even though the 12s believed he had killed King, that audacity had earned his grudging respect. After all, this human from the lower realms was the only one who had managed to fight him face to face. What a thrilling battle. Perhaps I'll remember you, King, the 12 murmured, almost sentimental. A voice answered from behind, echoing in a tone that sent a chill through his very soul. Is that so? What a pity. I'm afraid I'll forget you soon enough, because you're too weak. The 12's entire being prickled. In an instant, he blinked dozens of kilometers away, whirling to face the speaker, and froze. King stood there, alive, uninjured. Bro, you're not dead? The 12 blurted, incredulous. It made no sense. How could anyone survive a direct 10 explosion, especially after their adaptation had been nullified? The lemon the 12 had set earlier had not merely restrained. Those formations had funneled most of the 10's blast at King. That should have finished him, and yet here he stood, apparently unscathed. Ridiculous. You surprised I didn't get blown up by the 10? King asked, taking one step forward. Each stride covered thousands of meters in an instant, each footfall making the starry sky tremble. The thunderous Emperor engine, amplified by Qi, thundered across the heavens, reverberating through heaven and earth. Thump! Thump! With every step King advanced, the 12 instinctively took a step back. For the first time since his awakening, fear threaded through him. Staring at the unharmed King, he roared, voice shaking with disbelief. Impossible! Impossible! Even at our level, how could anyone absorb a 10 explosion and walk away unhurt? The 10's blast had been triggered by the 12's 5, and that energy carried his power to suppress wound recovery. If King had been grievously wounded by the explosion and then rapidly healed, it would indeed be impossible. Yet King kept coming, expression calm as still water, but exuding a sovereign pressure. Wondering why the 10 didn't blow me apart? Simple. I adapted to the whole 10. Once I adapted to it, its explosion stopped being a threat. What the hell? The 12 was dumbfounded. Is he even listening to himself? Adapted to the whole 10. Sounded like nonsense. His 3 burning strike had failed, and now this otherworldly human stood there and spat out impossible claims. The 12 could not bear it. He vanished and reappeared instantly before King, fist crackling with chaotic hues, and smashed toward King's face. King didn't bother dodging. Boom! The 12's blow connected. Shockwaves ripped outward, tearing space itself. But instead of triumph, the Pa 12 felt only a staggering shock and a rising terror. His fist had struck an immovable divine mountain. It had done nothing. King brushed the attack away without a scratch. Before the 12 could react, King's fist drove into his chest. Bones shattered with crisp, sickening sounds. Ribs exploded into fragments. The know on his chest disintegrated into a spray of debris. He was hurled like a meteor, tumbling uncontrollably through the cosmos until, after a long, painful roll, he barely managed to right himself. Seeing King closing in again, the 12 panicked. He slapped his hand onto the starry visage that blanketed the sky, intending to copy King's data as he had done before. But the copied face didn't appear. The slowly rotating starry sky froze mid-turn, glitched, and refused to materialize the stolen likeness. What was happening? Why couldn't he copy King now? The 12 was baffled. Earlier, he had clearly sensed that King's adaptation had been neutralized, so how had King suddenly adapted to the entire 10? What bizarre law was at work? King barreled forward, beating the already crippled foe while speaking as if making polite conversation. Every time I fought you on that 10 surface, I purposely let debris hit me or slammed myself into the ground. Those constant impacts caused imperceptible damage that triggered my adaptation. After 1,000 collisions, I adapted to every material on that 10. Anything coming from it can no longer harm me. Hearing this, the 12 completely lost his composure. Are you even speaking human language? 159. The ultimate crisis. Only now did God realize that his earlier assumption, that King's adaptability had failed, had been a deliberate misdirection. King had been suppressing his adaptation, luring God into a false sense of security, and then struck with everything he had. The two collided again, but the fight had changed completely. God flashed forward, his fists blurring into afterimages as he unleashed nearly 1,000 blows in an instant. Each strike carried enough force to crack a planet's crust. The sustained barrage would have destroyed a world. Yet King didn't flinch. He didn't even assume a defensive posture. He simply stood there and took it. With every impact, God's fear grew. Why couldn't his attacks wound him? Why did each blow feel as if it missed entirely? It wasn't the sensation of being parried. It was as if the force in his fists had been nullified. Nullified? The thought hit him like ice. Could his attacks be canceled by this man? Before he could fully process it, King's fist, compressed with terrifying chi and blood, slammed into God's face. Boom! God spun through the void realm like a top, and before he could steady himself, King was already beside him again. A storm of heavy punches rained down, chipping cracks across the black and gold armor that covered God's body. His star-filled visage began to fracture as if being blown apart. God tried to retaliate, but his strikes hit King without so much as a ripple, only giving the King openings to hit harder. Two crimson streaks of light braided through the void realm. God could not shake King's pursuit. He was battered into a daze by the speed and power of those fists, the injuries mounting with every blow. As another punch hurtled toward his face, God, desperate, crossed his arms to block. A shield of chaotic colors condensed at his forearms as his divine ability formed a defense. Chi and blood slammed into that shield, yet the divine barrier couldn't hold even a tenth of a second before shattering. The fist hammered into his star-strewn face. God grunted and was sent flying again. He finally steadied himself using the void realm, hovering unsteadily as glittering fragments of stars drifted through his vision. Instinctively, he touched his face and felt something warm, then the texture of hair, then sticky crimson blood. King appeared before him, but this time he didn't immediately strike. He watched with a curious tilt of his head. "Oh, you've woken up? How long are you going to be controlled by this guy, Garu?" From King's vantage, God's starry mask had been half shattered by the blows, and one of Garu's eyes had returned. At that sight, alarm detonated in God's chest. A furious roar burst from somewhere inside his mind. "Get out of here, you bastard! What do you think you're doing, occupying my body?" God sank his consciousness into his own mind and saw the source of the voice, a soul, weak, human, but remarkably compatible with the surrounding consciousness. The moment he sensed it, a repulsive force pushed at him. For an instant, he could not maintain full control. "This is bad," he thought. "This soul has actually awakened." Garu's soul was weak compared to God, but this body's mind had been the human's original territory. The soul wasn't going to drive God out outright, but its home field presence was already creating chaos, chipping away at God's control and reducing his combat effectiveness. In a crisis like this, that internal disturbance was deadly. The king before him was already a titanic problem, and now the mind itself was under siege. There were other troubles piling on. King's adaptability was steadily growing stronger, widening the numerical gap between them because God could not replicate King's attributes. More than that, something fundamental had changed. God's attacks were having no effect at all. That implied a mechanism, not mere toughness. Coupled with King's earlier boast about adapting to an entire planet, God's conclusion, absurd as it was, took shape. What if King had already adapted to God's very existence? If so, every attack God made could be nullified against him. It was like being cheated. Frustration flooded through him. To be bested so thoroughly by a low-dimensional being, by a single man, was an unbearable humiliation. External threats, internal rebellion, and strategic losses pressed round him. King stood menacingly before him. Garu's soul clawed for control inside his head. His most powerful subordinate, Sun's sperm, had become the pet of that bald man who transcended rules, and God couldn't even reclaim 30% of the opponent's divine power, further weakening him. A being who had long considered himself above gods and rules now felt an acute, gnawing panic. The situation had inverted. God, for the first time, was in real danger. Bam! 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 The heavenly god was knocked sideways, tumbling through the starry void. Before he could even stop his momentum, another blow sent him flying. King's punches grew only more brutal, so brutal that the heavenly god had no right to block. He could only take them, passive and helpless. Inside his mind, an arrogant voice wouldn't shut up. Aren't you so great? You wanted to possess this body, so why are you getting beaten like a mangy dog now? Speak up, trash! Garu taunted without restraint. As the possessor of the body, his consciousness had finally awakened, and he could see what was happening outside. Better yet, he watched it with the smug detachment of a third-person spectator. Seeing the heavenly god, the very form that inhabited his flesh, pummeled senseless by King, filled him with a vicious glee. If anything, he hated the heavenly god who had stolen his body even more than he hated King. Harder! That's what I want to see! King, don't make me lose face! Kill this idiot! Shut up! The heavenly god was already dazed from King's blows. Garu's taunts echoing in his ears made him furious and humiliated. You are a lowly creature, he roared inwardly at the white-haired youth who stood in his consciousness. What right have you to bark at me? But the white-haired youth remained unbothered. Garu sneered back, contempt thick in his tone. So what? I'm a stray dog, but aren't you getting beaten like one out there by King? You're nothing but scum. Rage flared in the heavenly god's chest. He raised his hand without hesitation. Divine power surged, and the whole mental space began to quake. He abandoned direct control of the body in the mortal world, letting King hurl blows at it, and focused on defending his inner domain, instinctively condensing a shield. The reason was practical. 2 threats at once. Outside, King kept striking. Inside, Garu's soul, this troublemaker, kept trying to wrest control. If he couldn't stop the threat from King, he could at least deal with Garu. Countless spikes of divine power formed and drove into Garu. Garu was surprised. He hadn't expected such a decisive strike. He fell into a fighting stance, tracing blue sigils in the void of the soul. Water stream rock smashing fist. Even as a thought, the motion was ingrained in him, a reflex carved into his soul. In his home territory, the heavenly god's divine power lost much of its bite. Garu's technique repelled the spikes one by one. In the dark soul space, a colossal, twisted humanoid loomed in the sky while thousands of spikes rained down. Below it, the white-haired youth, tiny as an ant, faced the storm with only his 2 fists. When the heavenly god realized that spikes alone wouldn't break Garu, he let loose a rolling tsunami roar. A vast wave made of chaotic colors surged like a dragon toward Garu. Garu almost swore. The wave slammed into him, leaving his form pocked with holes. Pale bone showed through in places. Still, he did not fall. He dropped back into the water stream rock, smashing fist stance again, his wolfish eyes glaring with stubborn defiance. Come on, I won't lose to a lowlife like you. The heavenly god was taken aback. This soul's will, this stubbornness, was far stronger than he'd expected. An ordinary spirit would have shattered in that tidal surge. Wave after wave crashed down, and Garu endured like a rock in a storm, bones bleaching and body reduced to a skeleton, breath nearly spent, yet his gaze never wavered. In the soul realm, such injuries couldn't truly kill him. Only the complete collapse of his will and the shattering of his soul into motes of light would do that. Seeing Garu still standing, the heavenly god grew furious. Why won't you die? Garu flexed arms that had turned to white bone and took the stance again. A coward who hides in the dark isn't worthy of beating me, he spat. He realized that passive defense would only buy time until his soul broke. He needed to fight, to survive, to become the absolute monster who could defeat all heroes. A white-haired figure flashed through his thoughts, someone he wanted to prove himself to. The burning will to live flared. He unleashed the water stream rock smashing fist and surged like a phantom straight at the heavenly god. Faced with Garu's berserk charge, The heavenly god chose not to parry. He let the attack slam into the shield of divine power while he pulled his consciousness back toward the real world. He had no choice. The body was about to be beaten to death. Back in reality, he coughed up blood. Scarlet ran from all 7 orifices. When he looked down, he saw the true damage. The hideous black and gold armor was shattered, riddled with deep, sunken fist marks. His flesh was pierced in places. Before he could think further, a fist condensed with dense chi and blood smashed into his face. Boom! The void of space in front of him fractured. His head snapped from the impact. A dry crack sounded along his neck. He was flung backward, and through blurred vision he saw a blinding light approaching. At first he thought it was the sun. No, it was a star, like a sun, blazing with heat and light. He hadn't expected that in the brief time he spent quarreling with Garu inside. King had dragged him out here. Scorching heat rolled over him. The heavenly god grabbed at the surrounding void, fighting to stabilize himself, but in the next instant, a scarlet streak of light slammed into him. King had seized the heavenly god's head and was charging at full speed. In the vast, lonely starfield, the 2 streaks of light collided with a giant star like a sun.